Thank you, Regina, and thank you for joining us for the top takeaways of Marketing Sherpa Summit 2016. We're going to go over a lot of great lessons from the summit, but first, let me give you a little bit of familiarity with what we're going to be doing today in case you've never attended a Marketing Sherpa webinar before. So, look, you're investing an hour with us today, and we really appreciate that. That's a big investment for you. So we want to make sure we're serving you during this time. So this isn't going to just be a webinar where we're just talking at you with a bunch of PowerPoints and whatever we came up with. We want to hear what you need. What do you need to better serve the customer? What do you need to improve your marketing? You can use hashtag Sherpa16 on Twitter to talk to us, ask your questions, and we'll try to make this webinar all about you. Now also, if you've attended Summit, hey, let us know what you learned there as well. These are just our lessons. I'm sure you learned something too. Use hashtag Sherpa16 and share with your peers your top lessons. So what you're going to hear today is a lot about customer first marketing. That's what we're all about here at Marketing Sherpa. So this is our attempt to make this webinar about you, our customer, and our audience. So let's jump into it. So when we talk about Marketing Sherpa Summit, hey, it's a huge event. We had over 300 applications. We had days worth of content. We had a bunch of award winners. And so what we're trying to do today, here's the value proposition of this webinar, take all that content, all of these case studies, and break it down for a few quick tips. Not the entire case studies, just a few quick takeaways that you can use to improve your marketing. And our hope is that we can give you 5, 10, 15 takeaways in the time we have. Maybe there's just 1 or 2 that will really make an impact for you, make a difference, and maybe change your year. So I am Daniel Burstein. I'm the Director of Editorial Content for Marketing Sherpa, and I oversee the summit and a lot of the case studies we publish on our website. And joining me also is a team that publishes to MarketingSherpa.com all those case studies you read. Courtney Eckerly, Managing Editor of Marketing Sherpa. So Courtney, what were you doing at Summit?
Well, I was running the media center where we interviewed some attendees and mostly the speakers. We did 31 interviews in the 2 days of Summit, and also with me doing some of those interviews was one of our Marketing Sherpa reporters, Shelby Dorsey.
Yeah, it was my first time at Summit, and I got to spend a lot of time in the media center meeting many of our speakers, and it was a lot of fun.
Great. Well, you're going to hear a lot from Courtney and Shelby about their lessons from Summit. But let's start with the numbers. Let's start with the data. So Marketing Sherpa, we have a lot of evidence-based marketers that are following us. So let's first explain, why did we choose the case studies we chose? Why did we set up the agenda the way we did it at Summit? And those are going to come into the lessons that we teach you today. So first of all, we did 2 major surveys. One, we went out to marketers. We went out to more than 400 marketers, and we asked them a lot of questions. One of them being, what are your top challenges? So what you see on the screen right now were the 7 biggest challenges of marketers. So at the top, we hear this every year: size of marketing budget, inadequate staffing and resources. We hear you, we feel you. It's very difficult to do more with less, but that's something we consistently hear. So we wanted to jump down and what are some of the trending topics now? So acting on data, you see number 3, content, always a big challenge, and ability to target recipients. And so that's what we made the entire summit about. Those were our 3 tracks. We had digital and data to help you with your data. We had content and social to help you learn how to produce content. And then we had email and mobile to help you better target your recipients. Now, we didn't just talk to marketers. We also did a survey of more than 2,000 consumers to get a sense of what are their preferences. And here's what they told us are their preferred ways of receiving updates and promotions from companies. You'll see receive in the mail was very popular, but actually the most popular is email, 60% total right there. So we broke it down for you so you can see most people want to subscribe at a frequency they choose, and then some too, 24% said, they don't really care, they just want email, whatever frequency your brand sends is enough. So we're going to get into a lot of email takeaways today. We also asked, how do you discover new products, right? So actually being in the store, that makes a lot of sense, that was a top answer. But they also wanted to hear from friends and family and colleagues, and they also use search engines. So that's where we're going to get into some of the content and social takeaways we have, how to help share the message, and how to help get more people to your website using content. And this is a very trending topic now, right? When people are away from their computer, when they're away from their home, how do they want to hear from you? Well, print ads were big. But second to that, the top mobile answer was email on my smartphone. Now, there's a lot of trending things when it comes to mobile, near-field communications and geolocation and all of these different things, apps and text, what have you. But it's very interesting that the top way that customers want to hear from your brand is still on email, on their smartphone. So we're going to get into a lot of that stuff. But let's jump into our first award winner. Take it away, Courtney.
Well, our first award winner was actually the Reader's Choice. So we put this case study up along with, I think, 5 others on the Marketing Sherpa blog, and the readers chose this as the one that they they liked the most and they wanted to see win the award. So Abby C. from Sunrise Senior Living. And Sunrise Senior Living serves almost 30,000 customers in North America and the United Kingdom. And through user experience testing, they realized something kind of critical that they'd been missing previously, which was that a lot of their customers who were coming to them had an urgent or immediate need. And it might be at night or during off hours when they didn't have somebody who could directly talk to them. And so they weren't sure how to serve them. So what they did was, step number 3 there, they launched something that they called the Care Questionnaire, which was a short series of questions that potential customers could go to on their website and figure out what kind of care that they or their loved one needed, and set up an interview with staff. But they could also be connected with relevant content that would help them at the time and maybe help ease a little bit of their concern. So 61% of people who started the survey completed it, and of those people, 6% asked to be contacted by a Sunrise representative. And the main takeaway there is simply by listening to their customers, they were able to provide a service that was sorely needed and that they'd been missing previously. And next up, actually, Dan, we have another award winner, Karen Thomas-Smith from Optum.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, what we're going to talk about with Karen, really ties into our first big takeaway from the summit, and that is successful marketing is customer-first marketing. If there was one theme to summit, we're going to talk about a few others. If there was one theme to summit, it was that. Successful marketing is customer-first marketing. So Courtney just gave a great example of how a B2C tried to learn about what their customers wanted so they can better serve them and ultimately sell more, right? So let's talk about a B2B that was able to do that. So our Best in Show winner was Karen Thomas-Smith. She's Vice President at Optum. And the way the awards worked, by the way, is me and Courtney and a lot of other key people here at MarketingSherpa and our parent research institute, Mech Labs, we got together, looked at all 319 applications, and weeded them out one by one until we got to our few key finalists. Our Best in Show was the one that we decided was the best in the entire pool of applicants. Then we also went to you with some of those finalists, and that was the Reader's Choice that Courtney talked about. Let's talk about why Karen won. So she came into Optum, and she was trying to assess what they were doing as a marketing organization. It's a very, very big organization. I'm sure you're familiar with it in the healthcare industry. It's a B2B. And she decided what they really needed to know is, what do their customers want? Right? She started with their customers. And so one thing she did is she hired a company to interview key executives in the hospitals and the different community health systems that were her customers. So 2 quick tips she gave here that are really helpful for anyone who wants to learn from their customers. One, these interviews weren't about, hey, what's your propensity to purchase Optum products? Or are you going to purchase our type of product in the next 6 months, right? We've all seen these surveys, we've all seen these types of interviews, and they're really self-serving, frankly, right? It's, when are you going to buy from us? When are you going to buy from us, right? She didn't ask that. She asked what was important to them. What are some of their key pain points? She also didn't do it directly. It wasn't Optum doing it. She hired a research firm so that the people that she was interviewing, these key executives, knew that this was some real research that was going to be helpful, not just try to sell them anything. This wasn't, a sales call in disguise. And lastly, one tip she gave is, don't ask for 30 minutes. 30 minutes is too much to ask an executive. They asked for 15 or 20 minutes, and they were able to book more executives and get that time. Now this was really key because the lessons that they learned from their customers help shape and transform their entire marketing organization. And they switched to be very content-focused, to serve their marketers with content. They also took those lessons and they shared them within the organization. So what you're seeing here is really clever. These are some persona cards, right? So we all know we should do personas, we should have personas, we should know our customers. But Karen made it very tangible and very real. These cards are on a key ring, and so you could easily carry them around and see, okay, here's a different type of customers. And some of the things they had on there, for example, were, hey, here's how I want to be sold to, right? Here are my goals. Here are my key issues. So not only for the marketing team is this really helpful, but it was also helpful for the sales force, right? Can you imagine if you're in sales and someone hands you a card and they say, hey, here's all the key information about the type of people you're going to talk to. So in a B2B organization, that is absolutely huge. It really won over the sales team for Karen, and it was very helpful for them. But like I said as well, Karen's goal, once she discovered what her customers wanted, how she could best serve them, was to do that, was to serve them with content. And what you're seeing here is, in that healthcare field, it is growing and evolving and changing so much lately. Technology is playing such a role. And this was a pain point for those customers, for those health executives. And so they created a journey of how these companies, these hospitals, could go from providing care to managing health, how they could navigate these difficult changes in their environment. So think about that in your own industries. What changes, what pain points are your customers going through, and how can you create a roadmap for them to success? Not necessarily just using your product, but in general to success. And then that was fueled with content, right? Partly that was content coming directly from their customers. Right? So they use their customers to not just create testimonials, but also teach. And they did it in a very caring way. They were sure to be very careful with their customers and not abuse that trust when they decide to become testimonials, not ask for too much from them. And they also created just a whole bunch of content out of it. I think it was 800 to 1,000 pieces, which is very impressive. And the way they did it was create a core piece of content. For them, this was an ebook. So many in their industry, they're distributing white papers. It's very technical. It's very boring. They decided, hey, how can we make it a little more entertaining for our customers? They created what they called Moneyball Analytics, tying into the movie, and created, as you can see, very visually appealing, very nice ebook that people can download. And then from this, for their core customers, they created all different pieces of content, right? So as we looked at one of the struggles, how do I create quality content? I don't have enough time, I don't have enough resources, I don't have enough budget. Well, create, in this case, what Karen did, one very, very good piece of content, and then look at other ways you can leverage it, right? Through blogs, through landing pages, through social media, through podcasts. There's all these different pieces you can use to make that happen. And the other important thing Karen did, so if you're looking at content and serving your customer through content as a key goal for your company, you have to make sure your organization is aligned to support it, right? Karen wouldn't be successful if she just created this one ebook, put it out there, and then never created another piece of content. She needed a content machine. And so she lined up and created her organization around content. She made sure there were subject matter experts, and then she was able to leverage everything they learned in the different fields and different verticals that were important to her through content. Now, the results, I'm sure you're not going to be surprised by this, right? She was the Best in Show winner. She did really well. Look at that, $120 million in sales pipeline created to date through content. So that's very, very powerful. Now, you don't have to take this from me. You don't have to take it from Courtney. You don't have to take it from Shelby. You can watch all of these presentations for yourself. You can go to MarketingSherpa.com/summit slides. Right now, at this very moment, if you go there, we have every slide from every presentation up there so you can review. But if you wait until the end of March, we'll also have all the videos up there so you can watch them for yourself as well. And all of these stories we're talking about, they come from marketers like you. So we'd love to hear your story of customer-first marketing success as well. We'd love to get you on the stage, interview you there at Marketing Sherpa Summit 2017 at the Aria in Las Vegas. You can just go to MarketingSherpa.com/CFS and tell us more about your story. But with that, let's hear about another story, Shelby.
Yeah, absolutely. This case study directly ties into what we're talking about customer-centric marketing. And so Torrin Gilkey from Boston Children's Hospital came to talk to us about how they optimized their site to be customer-centric. So if you're looking at the Boston Children's Hospital site, it's huge. It has thousands of pages, multiple blogs, over 200 content editors. So there's a lot of content on the site. And what they were finding was that customers were coming to the site and getting really frustrated. There were low satisfaction scores because customers couldn't find what they were looking for efficiently. And they found out that 50% of their customers were coming to them from mobile. And this was an issue because their site was not optimized to be mobile responsive. So Torrin told us about how he and his team took the information they were getting from customers and they optimized their site. They changed it. They discovered why people were coming to the site, either to find doctors, to set up an appointment, to diagnose a medical ailment. And they took these reasons and they streamlined their site according to their customer needs. And another important thing that they did was that they made their site mobile responsive. They updated it, optimized it, made it so it reflected directly what the customers needed. So I think this is an excellent example of a company taking direct feedback from their consumers and then using it to redesign their site. And the results from this particular optimization was that their customer satisfaction scores improved 20%, which is a pretty incredible lift from a simple redesign. And another incredible thing that we learned at Summit was the live test with Consumer Reports. We got to do that. So Dan, would you mind telling us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's great, Shelby, because you might be on this webinar now and thinking, okay, I get it. Let me listen to my customers, and I can do things like Boston Children's Hospital did. But how do I learn about my customers? And so let's give you one example right here with what we do with Consumer Reports. So every year at Summit, we conduct a live A/B split test. So what we do is we get with the audience, we design a test all together with the audience based on a hypothesis. Hey, we think the customer might like this, or we think the customer might like that. Then we run the test during Summit, and by the end of Summit, we look at the results and see what works. And we always partner with a nonprofit because, as marketers, hey, we can make a lot of money doing this, but maybe with a nonprofit, we can also help do a little bit of good while we're at it. So we were glad to be joined by Bruce Dusterhoff and Dawn Nelson, the Director of Fundraising from Consumer Reports. And I'm not going to tell you about the live test there. You can see that in the Summit slides that we shared. But I am going to tell you about how we decided to run that live test. So any test you run is only as good as the information you have to run that test. So before we even got to Summit, we wanted to run a test to understand the value proposition of Consumer Reports to inform our next test. And through this cycle of testing, we can get closer to the customer. We didn't want to run it alone. What we do every year is we ask the readers of the Marketing Experiments blog, that's a sister publication of MarketingSherpa, and we also go to a partner blog, in this case it was Convince and Convert, and we ask them, hey, you're all successful marketers. You all know how to create, copy that converts. Let's take a look at a challenge here. What would you do? How would you write this? And so we gave them 3 different value factors from our work with Consumer Reports beforehand that we think might be compelling to Consumer Reports to get more donations. So one of them was honest and unbiased reporting. One of them was personal impact, and one of them was quality of research. And then we also said, hey, audience, these are what we think the value factors are for Consumer Reports, but tell us, what do you think another factor is? And so they said consumer empowerment. So then people wrote different emails for these, and here are the different treatments, and we actually tested them. Now, you can't see the treatments too closely here, but through hashtag Sherpa16, we're tweeting lots of helpful information as well about all the case studies. So you can go there, see more information, or go to the Marketing Experiments blog shortly, where we're going to have full results about the test. And I'll tell you the results about this test in just one moment. But first, I wanted to thank Blue Hornet. So as I said earlier, hey, you didn't spend any money to attend this webinar. You did give us an hour of your time. We appreciate that. It's very valuable, and that's why we're trying to serve you. But the reason you didn't spend any money is because of a gracious sponsorship from Blue Hornet. They provide advanced segmentation intelligence, exceptional customer service, and email marketing that delivers results. And you can go to bluehornet.com for a demo if you're interested in any of that. But now I'm going to get back to the results. So it turns out that through our best efforts, through the best efforts of everyone in the audience, the control actually won. So the control we ran was a mixed value proposition that Consumer Reports is already using. We spent all this time, we looked at different value factors, we talked to everyone in the audience, and still we weren't able to beat that control. Now this is the challenge of testing, right? You can spend all this time, you run a test, you don't beat the control, and you're like, forget it, I'm not wasting time, right? But there are big wins even in your losses. So when I asked Dawn about this of Consumer Reports, because I felt kind of bad, right? I talked to Consumer Reports, I said, you should do this with us, it's going to be great, we're going to help you a lot. They spent a lot of time in this partnership. I said, hey, how did it work out for you? And she said, look, it was really valuable because of the process, because going through that process got us to think about our customers in a new way. But also, I learned from this. She said, I learned what themes resonate with my customers. Maybe I thought I knew, but I learned. And they were experienced testers already, right? So it's not like they hadn't run tests before. But from this next test into value, they learned more about that. And they also learned maybe they should change some of the emphasis of their future messages. Sure, maybe this doesn't work as a standalone email, but what can we learn from it? Now, the top performing treatment from anyone in our audience was quality of research, which came very, very close to the winner. And when you think about it, hey, if you're just a writer in the audience, you're not familiar with Consumer Reports, you come across a blog post, it's impressive to get even close to the results of the Consumer Reports marketers that are working there every day. So we also want to congratulate Anna Pildish, product marketing freelancer for Malaspina Labs, who had the top performing treatment in quality of research. I think the biggest lesson that you can learn here is, if you're trying to learn more about your customers and serve those customers, you've got to challenge that status quo. It might be from running a test, it might be from doing something else. But you can see both Dawn and Bruce, when I talked to them, hey, they were excited. They said you have to challenge what you think you know. Hey, our instincts are not always the customer's instincts. You live and breathe your brand every day. You come into the office every day, you think about it, you launch the website, you use the products. Your customers don't experience the brand in the same way. Your customers might be even very different from you. They might be a different niche or a different audience. So think about what can you do to get in those customers' shoes. Another way you have to do that is making sure you're rewarding your customers with something that really matters to them. And one of the speakers that came to talk to us about it was Charles Duhigg, the author of The Power of Habit, an awesome guy. What did you learn from Charles, Courtney?
Oh, Charles was great interview, great guy, great beard. He spoke about the power of habit and how marketers can harness that with their customers. So he gave an example of a group of German scientists who took a group of people, and one set they just talked to generally about why they should exercise, and they had them exercise for a little while. And then another group they took aside and they said, we want you to exercise every day, but immediately when you're done, eat a piece of chocolate to reward yourself. And when they went back 6 months later, they found that the group that hadn't been told to give themselves the reward afterwards, I think only 18% of them were still exercising, and the group that had given themselves the chocolate after exercising had a 24% rate of those who were still exercising. So he broke down habit for us, and there's a cue, which is some sort of, for instance, if you're exercising, if you're running, putting your running shoes by your bed in the morning before you're supposed to run. Then the actual habit, running, and then a reward at the end, like the piece of chocolate. And he said that marketers need to harness this type of behavior and reward their customers immediately after a desired action so that they can hopefully develop that habit and continually get customers coming back and continually repeating that behavior. And actually, Charles is our first Media Center interview that is already up. It's on MarketingSherpa's blog right now.
Is that how you got your Diet Coke habit, Courtney? Is it you got the cue and the reward every time? So that's definitely one way to reward a customer, right? You can actually give them something. You give them chocolate, Courtney, you can give her a Diet Coke, that's a reward. But think about how can you reward your customers with your actual marketing, with your actual headlines. And this is something Flint McLaughlin, the managing director and CEO of MECLabs Institute, talked about. He was speaking on our blind spots, and this is one of our biggest blind spots as marketers. We're not always focused on that customer reward in the copy we write. So let me give you an example, right? You can see here a series of headlines that we tested through MECLabs Institute, the parent research organization of MarketingSherpa. And there's a commonality between the ones that were most effective and the ones that were least effective. The most effective ones were point first. It started with what the customer got, right? The least effective ones were point last. It started with what the company wanted them to do, right? So think about that. Not even in just, if you're giving rewards like loyalty points or something like that, but even in your marketing, are you rewarding your customers? Are you being clear with them? Are you thinking with the customer logic of what can a customer get? Because our biggest challenge that Flint was telling us is our blind spot is self-interest. When we're writing our headlines, when we're writing our copy, when we're creating our promotions, it's all too easy to think about what do we want the customer to do, right? So a very simple way to do this when you look at the different test results is start a headline with get. Try that for 3 or 4 headlines. Just start with get, and you know what the customer will get. And then you can move on from there and think about how can I step out of my own self-interest? How can I remove myself from this blind spot and focus on the customer? I know another company that focused on the customer by using data was nakedwines.com.
Yeah, they incorporated the reward into what they learned from their data. So this is Julia Fox from nakedwines.com, and she did a case study with us. And I'm going to show you their customer funnel. And they have something called an angel. So customers can sign up to be an angel. And nakedwines.com is not a subscription service. So people that sign up to be angels, they put $40 a month into what Julia called a piggy bank. And then when they want to order, they just pull from that piggy bank. So they were looking at the qualities that made up a valuable customer for their brand. And what they found was that people that were very engaged, incorporated the social aspect of nakedwines.com into their purchasing, those people stuck around longer and typically spent a little bit more money. And so what they found was that people that were new to the angel program were most susceptible to being introduced to these qualities and developing these qualities. So they redid their onboarding process. Originally, they had just a basic email send that introduced people to the site, kind of gave them navigation on where to find things, and they completely redid it. They created a series of 5 onboarding email sends that asked customers to complete an action. And I really like this slide because it gives the consumer a really strong visual of not only how far they've come and how many things they've completed, but also what they're going to get. They're going to get a bottle of wine, which if they're signing up for nakedwines.com, this is obviously a reward those customers would be interested in. So one of the steps that Julia talked about was that step 3 of their onboarding process was to download the app. And the app is where a lot of the social components came in, so that's where people could communicate with other consumers, talk directly to winemakers. Nakedwines.com just kind of cuts out the middleman in that respect, so consumers get to really appreciate the brand for what it can offer opposed to competitors, And what they found with this onboarding process was that they had a 28% increase in the lifetime value of their consumers. So they very explicitly gave a reward to customers, just like Charles Duhigg was saying, and then they were able to also see a lift, which was really exciting. And this leads us to our 3rd takeaway from Summit, which is to experiment with new ways of storytelling.
You got to tell us about this, Courtney, because so far we're telling marketers, give people chocolate and wine. So there's got to be more to marketing than just give people chocolate and wine.
I mean, I'm okay with that message. HCSS was one of my personal favorite case studies, not to be biased or anything. I loved them all. I did write a case study with Dan Briscoe, and he was actually kind of a star before he even showed up to Summit. We were all following him. He was tweeting that he and his family were on a road trip on their way to Las Vegas, which was really fun to watch.
Yeah, we'd go to #Sherpa16 and just see them go from Houston to Vegas. It was great.
Well, the story here, HCSS is a construction software company, and B2B, obviously. And so the story here is they wanted to create something fun that their customers would care about, which in the B2B sphere I know a lot of marketers struggle with. And just to give you a little tidbit, pay attention, this is their web visits at the beginning of the contest. 880% increase by the end of it, which is huge. And so Dan was telling us in the construction sphere, they were talking to their clients and getting a lot of great stories and feedback, but as soon as they turned a camera on or tried to turn it into any sort of constructive content, they were struggling. People would freeze up, or they just weren't able to get really compelling customer stories that they could utilize. So they got creative with it, and they decided to make a March Madness style bracket competition to have their customers compete against each other for what they called the most interesting project. And Dan told me, before we started this project, we've got a small marketing team. And before we did this, marketing was basically just considered a print shop. You'd come downstairs when you needed something small done. And this project really put us on the map and showed what our marketing team could do and what we could bring in. So what they did was this took place over 125 countries participated, and I personally think another really impressive metric is the 633% lift in social media traffic for the construction sphere. That's huge. And Dan told me that they were expecting at the beginning of this maybe 16 entries, and they ended up with 117. They actually had to really quickly be really nimble with this campaign and expand it to include the huge rush of customers they got in. And one of their customers actually got on the local news for participating in this contest, which is really cool.
And I thought it was fun. Dan was talking to us at Summit about, because this campaign was so successful, the plans they have for next year. They're going to extend a video. They're changing the name of it to make it more encompassing, more inclusive. So this has really made a huge impact on their marketing strategy.
Oh, definitely. And that's one thing I really love to see when I'm doing a case study, or if we have people coming back to Summit year after year, is how their marketing progresses and evolves year after year, especially with a similar sort of campaign.
Yeah, and the one thing that really impressed me with this one, we were judging, because this was one of the finalists.
Yes.
is we hear all the time, kind of as we saw in the beginning of the webinar, that businesses struggle with how do I create engaging content, especially B2B companies. How do I create engaging content? And they'll come to us and they'll say, I'm industrial or manufacturing. Like, I don't have anything fun like a pair of shoes or headphones or a travel site. But look at that. I mean, they had construction software, not exactly the most interesting product when you think of it in the beginning, but they found ways to really connect with their customers and tie into their customers' passion. No matter what B2B industry you're in, no matter how boring it might seem on the outset, anyone working those positions, they've got a lot of passion for what they do, and you got to find a way to tap into that and help them tell that story.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about a B2C example right here. So Clark Cummings from Marriott International. This is a great other example of how you can use data with your customers. So often we hear from customers, or we hear in the news, people are worried about data privacy. They're worried about you finding out about what they're doing and how you're using that information. But the real question isn't, am I going to go in and look at some information and track people what they don't know? The real question is, hey, I have data about my customers, especially transactional data. How can I use that in a way that's interesting to the customers? And that's something Clark Cummings from Marriott International was really trying to do. So it starts with their year in review email, right? So they decided to do this at the end of 2014, do a year in review email. The traditional emails they were sending to their Marriott Rewards members. So Marriott Rewards, you're probably familiar with it, but it's a customer loyalty program of people who travel and then they get rewards points for it. So you can see that in the before, very traditional looking email. However, in the after, you can see it's an instantly appealing email, right? Very, very edgy for any brand to do something different like that. And it starts with a video right there, and that video was a personalized video, right? You can see it says, Simon, thanks for your loyalty this year. Simon, we made this video just for you. That video was personalized, and in it included use of customer data, but it did it in a way that was appealing to the customer. So let me show you one example from farther down in the email. So it started with the video, and it had many different things in there. But here's one example, right? So your year with Marriott Rewards, and it has in here, here's how many nights you stayed, here's how many points you earned, right? And it does it in a very appealing infographic-y way. And so in this way, again, this is private information about the customer, right? How many cities did you go to? How many nights did you stay? But by doing it in this way, it made it a little fun. And especially for the Marriott customer, when you think about them, the ultimate traveler, they're kind of that road warrior, right? And they're proud of how many miles they've racked up and how many places they've been. It's almost a competition. So by sharing the information that way, it made it very appealing to the audience. And it made it about them. Right? It wasn't just data that we used to try to sell them something. It was data we used that Marriott used in a way to teach them something about themselves, something they can share with others. But you'll also notice that they didn't only have information here about the customer. By including some of that personalized information, it also gave them a little bit of air cover to include information they wanted to share about Marriott, right? So for example, including there that there were 7 different brands they stayed in, right? So the average customer probably doesn't think or care about hotel brands, but that's something that every hotel chain wants to share about. We have these different brands. This is something we can share with you. Here's another example, right? Members loved these cocktails in 2014. So this is data. You probably have this too. If you're struggling with what can I share with my consumers in my email campaigns to grab them, you probably have this data lying around. This was data that was lying around. What are the most frequently ordered cocktails? No one was doing anything with it in the marketing department. And then Clark had that idea. Wouldn't it be fun? And he calls the beverage department, and they're like, what? What do you want to do? But he gets that information, and then they're able to share it in this newsletter. And it adds a little bit of levity. And it adds a bit of community to it too, right? Everyone wants to have a community around their brand, so there's a little bit of community around the Marriott Rewards brand of these are the type of things that people are drinking. So think about in your own company, right? What data might you have that you're collecting already, that your company's collecting, that you're not leveraging in the marketing department that might be interesting for your customers to know? I would say in this case, could even be interesting for the press or something like that, right? You can share some of those aggregate data you collected. And of course, they have some conversion objectives as well. And it is to Marriott's benefit if people download the Marriott mobile app and use that mobile app. And so again, they didn't say, hey, download our app, right? It's similar to what we were talking about previously from Flip McLaughlin's presentation, right? What does the customer get? It wasn't focused on what the company wants them to do, download our app. It focuses on what the customer wants to get. They didn't even need to use the word get. They just showed the data. And you can see here it says there were 4 million downloads and 1 million mobile check-ins, right? So they didn't have to have a call to action say, do it. Look, your peers are doing it. A lot of social proof, you can do it as well. The feedback was awesome. People actually wrote to them and said it was interesting. I was like, wow, I love this video about me. I love this email about me. And another great thing, of course, is the results. So December had traditionally been a pretty down year, down time of the year for Marriott, as you can see in 2012 and 2013. And doing this really increased, shot up their bookings, it shot up their open rate, leveled off, went down a little in 2015 when people got used to this. But again, it was a chance to do something in a downtime and really, find data that tells an interesting story about the customer. Speaking of, being experimental and trying new things, I know Danny Gavin was really an example of that.
Oh, definitely. Danny was a really big component of kind of pushing the envelope, and they had an issue where he was in a spot where he's like, I have a small marketing budget, which I know a lot of people face, and how can we compete against our established online and local competitors, which for Brian Gavin Diamonds is a large amount. You have online and you have local competitors. So they needed a cost-effective method that would help them stand out. And they looked at Vine, which I don't think that any of their competitors were really utilizing, at least not to the full extent, and definitely not in the way that Danny decided to use it. So the strategies that they used, one, don't oversell. So they didn't want to be pushy or really promotional with this content. Vine is meant to be fun. They're little 6-second videos that you can be creative with. And so they didn't want to look at it as a platform to push product. So be true to the platform, that fits into that. They wanted to be timely and relevant, so they created videos around Valentine's Day and other different kinds of holidays, and distill. So distill the brand value and the value proposition into 6 seconds, which takes a lot of creativity, which they used. So for instance, this video, somebody drawing the ring and then they pull it out and then the diamonds in it. And I think the tagline here was, Brian Gavin Diamonds are cut beyond brilliant, which is good. And they had another one with somebody opening up their diamond out of the Brian Gavin box. So they're giving customers the experience so that they want to walk into the store and see that ring. I could just watch it twirl around in that box forever. So they saw really interesting results here. So they integrated the Vine content into their email, and Danny talked about how easy it was to repurpose and integrate across all of their different channels, but particularly with email, they saw a 23% increase in open rate. But beyond that, more importantly, they saw a 1,200% increase in click-through rates for their customers with this content. So something that was fun and not meant to push product actually ended up being the most effective at doing that. And on their website, they saw a 20% increase in direct traffic, which there aren't even any direct links to the website on Vine. So that was a really interesting result to me. And Danny said they couldn't directly attribute it to Vine, but that's what he sort of anecdotally attributed it to. And his main takeaway from all of this was that marketers not be so afraid to experiment with new platforms, even if you're not sure if your customers are there. Just try it out and jump in and see if you can make a splash, because that's where the biggest differences are gonna come from.
Absolutely. And they, when we did the case study on them, I remember that on a blog that talked about jewelry campaigns, they came in second right behind Tiffany's. So this simple social media campaign, they obviously spent a lot of time and effort on it, but like you were saying, like trying to compete with big competitors, this was a great way for them to generate attention for their brand.
Oh, definitely. And somebody who knows a lot about generating a lot of attention, Morgan Spurlock.
Yes, he was one of our featured speakers. A lot of people probably recognize him as being the director and producer of CNN's Inside Man. But Morgan talked a lot to our audience about storytelling and the importance of storytelling. And one of his main takeaways was that people love stories, but they want to be told them in a way that they don't feel like they're being sold something. And I think, Dan, this ties into what you were talking about with Optum, where they generated a campaign where they were more listening versus selling. But Morgan showed us a couple very interesting videos that I thought were important by brands such as GE and Haagen-Dazs, where they produced these videos that were more about the essence of their brand, a feeling that they wanted their consumers to come away with, more than a product. So they would show artisans doing what they're passionate about, or new medical technologies that are, generating inspiring results. And they would scan over the product, but the message was more about the feeling, the takeaway, the essence of the brand. And I think this ties really nicely into what you both were saying about Brian Gavin Diamonds and Marriott and HCSS, is telling your customers a story, not necessarily directly selling to them.
That's a great point. Something Karen even mentioned when we talked was, when they first started this content-oriented approach, the sales force would come to her and be like, well, wait a minute, there's no product in here. There's no product in here. And she's like, no, that's not the point. Let's help people and teach people. Yeah. And then they'll come around to the point where we get to the product.
I think it starts a great conversation.
Absolutely.
With your consumers. That's really important.
Yeah.
And so diving into our fourth takeaway from Summit, enable your community of customers. We talked to Cambria Jacobs from Door to Door Organics, and she wanted to talk about their social media community that emerged. Door to Door Organics is a subscription company. People can get weekly, bi-weekly, locally sourced and organic products delivered right to their door. And so the team at Door to Door noticed that consumers were organically sharing their produce. She described it as Christmas. Every time a box was delivered, customers were really excited to take beautiful pictures with their box and their kids and their pets, and it was very homey and organic and exciting. And so the team at Door to Door had all this organic, natural content out there, so they created a hashtag, and I love this hashtag, it's just so positive, Joy Delivered. And this was a way to create a community amongst the people that were just naturally, organically sharing, plus it provided a way for when people use the hashtag, the company to be able to pull from that content without necessarily creating it themselves. And what was really exciting about this was, as customers were posting their own content, the team at Door to Door Organics was able to learn what content resonated with their customers. They were able to get a glimpse of what was really interesting to customers, what they were passionate about, and then that team was able to generate content based on what they were seeing from their customers. And when we talked to Cambria, she was very passionate about how different social media platforms, depending on your business, can be used for different purposes. So I really thought it was interesting that they have multiple Facebook pages. Because their business is so focused on locally sourced organic products, they have different Facebook pages for all of the different regions they serve. So it's very natural, very personal, and I think that really ties into their brand essence, their brand voice. But they found that Instagram is a little bit more wide. It's just very image driven, so it's all about just having a pretty image. And as you can see from the slide, they were able to increase their social media followers in a really dramatic way, 500% growth on social media platform presence, which is really, really impressive and ties into having a great brand community.
There's something else that's impressive. I just want to note, Shelby,
yes.
You used the word organic to mean 3 different things.
I did.
That was very impressive. But another important thing about what Door to Door Organics was doing in building that social media community is it also helped with their customer service, right?
It did.
So when you can build that community and through social or however you do that, it has other benefits. So Door to Door Organics, and this might be unique in the grocery industry and a few other industries, but think about it. You're delivering fresh, organic food, right? There's going to be a certain spoilage rate, right? It just comes with the product. And so when you open up that box, like Cambria said, it was like Christmas morning to people. It was joy delivered. But the problem is sometimes, the organic lettuce it's gone bad. And so what do? And so people would share that on social media, and instead of getting negative feedback from that, Door to Door Organics was so active and working so much in those communities that they would very proactively get with the customers and help them with that situation. And the customers understood and they enjoyed the product more.
Absolutely.
And so that's a big challenge for fresh produce, right? But for any product you get, it can be shipped, it can be an unideal product. So if you're active in social and you see when people are talking, you see what they're doing and you're engaged with them, you can really help mitigate that and build better customers and make sure they're all joyful when they get it delivered.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's a wonderful point.
Yeah. I definitely love the part about how they had multiple Facebook pages for different areas. And it really speaks to kind of the overall takeaway from Summit that I got, which is customer centricity. So I talk to marketers all the time who through case studies who talk about how we had multiple Facebook pages and we consolidated them down to one, and that's what was best for our customers. And here you have a company where what was best for their customers was the exact opposite. So I think in social media, marketers sometimes think, well, it is what our customers will make what they want out of it. But you still have to be testing in social media and continually optimizing to figure out what is going to work best for your customers.
Absolutely.
And speaking of social media, we have Baxter Denny, who works for New Relic, a software analytics company. And what they wanted to do was they were going into a yearly event that they attend, and obviously it's a crowded space, both physically and in social media, and they want to know, how can we stand out? How can we engage people more fully than we have in the past, and just kind of do something fun that people will be talking about? So what they did was they set up a photo booth at the event. They took professionally lit photography of attendees and created these digital New Relic billboards where people could say why they're a data nerd, which was New Relic's tagline. And then they were able to share these on social media. New Relic was sharing them and telling people where the booth was. And it was so successful that afterwards they were wondering, well, they had 200 retweets and 400 likes for the billboard social post during the event. 14% of attendees of the event participated in it, and including high-profile attendees such as the VP of Engineering for Airbnb. And so they thought, how can we capitalize on this? How can we take something that was really successful for us and keep it going for our customers who maybe weren't there? So what they decided to do, they took that one idea and they turned it into, they made tiny billboards. They found a company that I think in China who makes these small billboards, and they made printouts for select customers and attendees that they had gotten the tiny billboards of, and they sent them to them as a gift. They made them tweetable for some other customers, and then they actually integrated them into physical outdoor billboards that they put up. So they took this one campaign, this one good idea, they saw the success of it, and they really just took it as far as they possibly could to some great results. And the shareability here is really what I love. So not only did you have people tweeting the digital pictures, but they would get the tiny billboard that they could put on their desk, and they were sharing photos of that. And I mean, not only that, but you have that person, that customer, with that reminder of your company sitting on their desk every day, which is it's just such a great campaign. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and there's, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
Well, there's just such a focus on the customer there, right?
Yeah.
So, when we talk about social, I think a lot of times we're trying to make our brand look good, but Baxter's focus was on how can we make the customer look good, right? And I think another key thing too is companies are always talking to us about, well, how can I mix online and offline? And like you said, they took a very online idea and they brought it offline. And billboards, which is considered such a traditional type of advertising, but also in direct mail. So I thought that was so cool.
It was so clever, and I mean, it really worked. They saw a 213% increase in social media engagement during that event, and like I said, the 14% participation rate for attendees, which anyone who has been to a vendor at an event knows that that's tricky. And next up, we actually have Morgan from Donors Choose.
Yes, I love this campaign about creating a community among your customers. And DonorsChoose.com, or .org, excuse me, is a crowdfunding site for teachers. And when Morgan came to speak at Summit, they had just recently reached their $400 million mark for donations. So I was talking to her about how you achieve such an incredible amount of donations and how you build that community amongst your customers. And she shared that they receive a lot of their revenue from email. And more specifically, a lot of that email revenue comes from transactional email sends. And so that's the best way they found to really foster that community that inspires people to donate. So when people sign up for DonorsChoose.org, they receive emails that really bring them into the classroom, that show them what their contributions are doing, how they're directly affecting these teachers and their students. You can see that welcome email when people first donate. You've made a difference today. It's very personal, brings people directly in with their donation. There's thank you letters directly from the teachers, special delivery. There's this constant communication between the company and the consumer that loops in the teacher to let the customer know exactly how what they're doing is helping. And I really like this idea that you could see photos about finished projects that people had contributed to. All of these emails just absolutely exemplify creating a community between, in this case, your teachers and your customers. And then what I really liked that Morgan said was that once people donated to a teacher and they learned about that specific project, they would get notified about future projects and just stay in the loop, new ideas for projects, new rugs, all that sort of thing from this example. So I really think this was a great case study that really demonstrated how important building a community is, especially when you're trying to do something like raise donations for a cause.
What we see with Donors Choose and what we saw with nakedwines.com also is just how they really served as connectors, right?
Right.
And
absolutely.
so, they have that audience of teachers, they have that audience of parents, and they serve to connect them. And that's how you build a real community, right? I don't think it's about the Donors Choose brand. I don't think it's about the nakedwines.com brand. I think it's about those different groups they're able to bring together and what matters to those groups.
And that's what we saw with Door-to-Door Organics, is that people are really passionate about that product, so they're getting in touch with other people that are passionate about the product and just kind of building that momentum, which really just serves to benefit the brand.
Yeah, and another thing Door-to-Door Organics did, which we didn't have time to fit into here, is they even had, I thought this was fun, like online trading cards of the different farmers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
the
about
farmer trading cards. Yeah, it was like designed like a baseball card. It was really neat.
And it's so fun. Again, it's just that people
Yeah.
connection, which we're, social media is a digital platform at the end of the day, but there are people behind it, and just trying to connect them, because that's where the real value proposition comes from, right? It doesn't come from the brand, it comes from the people.
Absolutely.
And the reason people participate in a product like that is because they want to be more connected with their food and the people who are growing it. If they can't do it themselves, they want to know who the farmers are. And it's also fun for kids. I mean, there were pictures people post on social media of people putting their kids inside the box. So that's something fun for kids. It's really a great example of understanding your customer.
All right, so we got wine, chocolate, and put your kids in a box. So I think it's time to get nitty-gritty and talk about deliverability.
Oh yeah, don't overlook the nuts and bolts. This is something that it isn't as fun, but it is absolutely necessary. And the reason why is Laz Terakidis from the Metropolis International Group came to Summit and told us why you should stay on top of your email list, cleanse it. And I know it's something that we talk about all the time. It's something you hear all the time, and it's scary to cleanse your list and drop numbers and try to propose something like that. But it's even scarier to be blacklisted, which is what happened at Metropolis. They were blacklisted for 2 months. So no emails going out, absolutely nothing for 2 months, which affected 24 B2B brands. And so Laz was brought in. He quickly implemented a 5-step campaign to help turn it around, get them back online, and begin email marketing again. So the first thing that they did was the dreaded database cleanse. They cleaned 98% of their email list. They ended up taking out about 2%, which I believe was 200,000 names, he said. And from there, they went into list segmentation so that they could be more relevant to their customers and provide better content. And they even ran a campaign to reach inactive contacts to kind of rebuild that trust and to get people opening up their email campaigns again. So, and they wanted people to amend their preferences so that they could serve their email subscribers the way that they wanted to be served.
Yeah, it's important to set up a preference center like we saw in the previous slide to understand, okay, what types of emails do your customers want so they get the right ones, right? Especially for a company like Metropolis, which has 30 different magazines, so it's an editorial publication. So you can decide, I want newsletters, maybe I don't want these type of marketing sends or something. You're not losing people who don't want the marketing sends, but you can still keep them on the newsletter list. So it's good to have those preferences. But then that challenge is, well, if you're a mature company and you have a list like Laz does, well, then you got to still go back to your current customers, right, and make sure they amend their preferences and they go into the preference center too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Kevin Costner really summed it up for us. If you build it, they will come. So if you put that preference center right up front where people can see it, they'll go in, they'll appreciate the gesture. Sometimes it's hidden or you just even don't have one. But it's something people really appreciate, even those who are signing up and your current customers, if you let them know that it's there. And from there, they made their email templates responsive so that they would adjust to mobile and tablets. And they saw a 22% increase in open rates after they did that. And they had a fresh design that customers responded to, and was another indication things are different this time around and we're going to be more responsive to your needs, literally with your mobile. And something that they also tested, which we get questions about all the time, send time. When is the best time that I can send to my customers? And the response is, as always, you have to test. You just have to test to figure out what is best for your customers. For Laz, the best slot was at 1 p.m, and the third best slot was 11 a.m. And they tested this for a few months, and that's how they figured out what was best for their customers. But there isn't one that's good for everybody. You have to test. And they also did subject line optimization through A/B testing to figure out what was going to work best. Top story, don't miss, those kinds of things. And they found out that top story was the one that got the best response out of customers. And they saw a 60% increase in email opens, 90% increase in traffic coming from the email campaigns, and an 8% increase in online revenue. But I think the most important takeaway here is that they got back online and now they are continually testing and optimizing, keeping their list clean so that it never happens again. And he was very gracious to share the story with us. A lot of times when something like that happens, marketers don't want to share it and they just want to move past it. But he really dug into what happened, why, and how can we make sure that this never happens again and we keep a healthy email program. And next up, we have Bart Thornburg from Wedding Wire.
Yes, before we go, I think this is a really important lesson because it's something that I think a lot of marketers take for granted in their email newsletters, but that Bart from Wedding Wire changed and it had a huge impact. So Wedding Wire's customers are very social. It's a lot of Pinterest, it's a lot of Instagram. These are people that are engaged, looking to plan their wedding and the final stages of planning their wedding. And Bart talked about how they use content to really engage customers on social. 9 Signs a Wedding Venue is the one, just fun stuff to engage their consumer base. This is an example of their email template before they optimized, and it had the standard social calls at the top, just the quick buttons, and they were sending these to 24 million people. And what they were finding was that 0% were clicking. And we had a great graphic at Summit that showed that's the equivalent of sending to, I believe, 3 states and no one using those social things. And so what they did is they just simply redesigned their email template. They created a pin now, read later button, got rid of what they had at the top. Same content, just a different call to action, and they moved it so it was a little bit more visible. And this created a lot more shares. Customers were engaging with the content on a regular basis. They were sharing it more. And I think this just shows how such a simple, bare bones change, changing the template a little bit, can engage your consumers in a way where they weren't engaging before.
And that was a real trend I saw from talking to marketers at Email Summit. You know, in the past, it's been a lot of big, splashy campaigns. And this year, we had a lot of marketers who were testing the bones of an email and really getting down to the templates and figuring out what they could adjust there. A small change to make a big impact, and removing those social buttons was really one of them. A lot of marketers throw them in; it's standard. And I remember he told me, even if somebody had clicked on it, I don't want that. If they're ignoring my call to action, then I failed. So why do we even have them there? So they removed them, and it was just such a great campaign.
Yeah, and another great takeaway was, what we saw so many successful marketers do is use the data to understand the customer. Absolutely. So when Bart looked, it was crazy when we did that calculation, 24 million sends, not one click. Like, how many marketers on the phone really know how many people are clicking on each element of their email, especially those social share buttons? Take a look. Don't waste that real estate, and make sure you're serving your customers. So we've got the last slide up, which means we are all out of time. Thank you for joining us today. We could not possibly fit the day's worth of content, 2 days worth of content into this 1 hour webinar. So if you want to learn more about any of these case studies, go to marketingsherpa.com/summit slides. You can see all the slides, and there are more case studies too, and you can dive into some deeper detail to some of these stories. Hopefully you got some good takeaways to improve your own email marketing campaigns and your own social marketing and content marketing campaigns from everything we talked about today. There's going to be a survey that's going to pop up at the end of this webinar. Please fill it out. Tell us what you thought of this webinar. Was it helpful to you? Should we be doing this? Is there a way we can improve it? Let us know. And on behalf of Shelby Dorsey, Courtney Eckerly, and I'm Daniel Burstein, thank you for joining us today.